Hello, this is Katie and we're going to be making this cuff bracelet today. So this is a cuff bracelet that's basically a very nice thick wire. It's all made kind of in one piece for the base, and then we're going to be channel setting. So we'll be channel setting all of these beads inside, all these gemstones inside, and then we'll be finishing off with a little weave just so it doesn't just end, and then just finishing off with these loops at the end. So it's a really basic design, but it's a really substantial one because we're using that nice thick wire. It goes on your wrist really nicely. You can just use the warmth of your hands just to kind of mold it around. And I make mine so I've got a nice gap in the middle there. I don't like anything sort of too tight on my wrist there, but if you want yours, you can just add an extra couple of inch if you want yours a little bit longer, and add a few more beads. So this is what we're going to need. We're going to be using, so this is my base wire. This is a 1.25 wire, which is a 16 gauge in your American terms. And then we're going to be using a 0.4 wire, which is this, which I've got pre-threaded. So the 0.4 millimeter wire, which is your 26 gauge, that we're going to be using about 2.5 meters. So there's going to be 2.5 meters. And then you're going to need to pre-thread your beads. You can add as you go along, it's entirely up to you. I've just decided to pre-thread mine, and I have 3 pre-thread in my pattern. So I'm using these 14 millimeter tubes. So these are my Unakite tubes, and then I'm using 3 millimeter Aventurine, and I've got some copper beads as well. So I've got 5 of my beads. So I've got my tube, 5 beads, 2 beads, 1 copper, 2 beads, and then 5 beads. So that's my thread pattern. So as I've thread, you can see that's my thread pattern. So that's my tube, 5 beads, and then that's my 5, so 2 copper, another 2, and then my final 5, and then repeat the pattern. And I've got that 8 times, but then I'm finishing with an extra tube as well. So this is a full strand. It's usually about 38 centimeter strand, and you can see how much I've got left of the 3 millimeter beads. So you do need quite a lot of those. And the tubes, I've only used 9 of them altogether, so I've got lots and lots of left in my strand. I will tell you a little bit just right at the end of the video where I got these beads from, and how you could get involved as well. So I'm just going to move a few things out of the way, then show you what tools we're using, and we'll get started. So firstly, what tools are we going to be using? So we've got our flush cutters or side cutters, and then we've got some flat nose pliers. So flat nose, you've got a little bit of width there. Some people's flat noses will be wider than others. This is a nice narrow pair. Then I've got some chain nose pliers. This is a super narrow pair as well. So this gives you a really nice chain nose. They're very, very similar. This is actually a round nose. You can only tell when you turn them this way. So I've got my chain nose plier, which you can see if I bring that up to the camera. It's really, really nice and fine. I love this for bringing weaves together, so just pulling things together, and for getting into all your nooks and crannies, so they're fantastic. And as I just showed you, my round nose pliers. So these are very fine round nose pliers. You can see how fine they are. Let me just find a traditional pair. Sort of, you can see they're just that little bit finer, sort of when you look at them that way. It's just minutely finer, but they're very, very good for making beautiful, very tiny loops, especially if you're using more of a fragile wire. So they're fantastic. So these are my new tools. I've just acquired these from Rocks and Chains, which I will put a link in the description below this video, so you can take a look if you're interested in them. They're absolutely fantastic. I love them. I've been using them for about 3 weeks now, and they're my go-to pliers now. Absolutely. Right, so let's just move some of these out of the way, and let's take a look at our wire. So like I said, we're using a 1.25 wire, which is your 16 gauge. Now the length that we need is 14 inches, which is approximately 36 centimeters. And we've also got our 0.4 millimeter wire, which is 2.5 meters, so 250 centimeters, or 2.73 yards if you use yards and inches. So we've got everything prepared. Our everything's pre-threaded, don't forget to make a little knot at the end of your wire just to make sure your beads don't come off. And we can start. So we're going to start with our base wire and make ourselves that beautiful frame, so that nice frame. And because we're using the 1.25 wire, you will find that you're not going to need to hammer this or anything. You can do if you want to, if it makes you feel a bit better, but you won't actually need to be hammering these. So we're going to find the middle. So I did pre-mark the middle there, just with a little bit of pencil. So we're going to find the middle, and then we're going to take one of our beads. So let me just find one of my tube beads. Okay, so I've got the middle just there, and then I've got my tube bead. I'm just going to sit it kind of so my little mark sits in the middle of that bead, and we're just going to kind of eyeball it. So I'm going to just pinch it just at the end there, and I know that's where I need my first angle. So I'm using my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to make, so you can use your chain nose or your flat nose and just bring that in so that I get a nice, don't worry that this is curving, we want a nice kind of 45-degree angle there. Then we're going to pop a little bead in. So we want to pop our bead in. This is rather than actually just measuring it, we're just using this as a guide. So I'm pop my bead in, it's right up to the wire at this side. I'm going to pop my pliers in, but then I'm just going to slide them out just a couple of millimeters just away, because we want a little bit of space, okay, because when we turn we'll actually reduce that size a little bit. So I've just pulled that in. Don't worry that they're crossing over, this is a section that we're going to be working in. This will come out as we work along, and now I know that my bead is going to sit really nicely. That little tube is going to sit nicely inside there. Okay, so I don't need that one now. We're going to start our weaving. So just trim this end off because we know they're not going to fall off now. I've got a hold of it. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ignore the fact that they're crossed over. They're going to cross over anyway. We don't want to be bending these wires. We want to keep them as smooth as possible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my wire up in between. So I'm bringing it up in this kind of area in the middle there. I've just got a slight tail just so I've got something to hold on to. And I'm going to wrap over that bottom wire. So once, twice, and 3 times. So I've got 3 wraps. Now I've gone with 3 wraps because I'm going to continually do 3 wraps at each side so that it just keeps it nice and even. Now if you really wanted to, you could wrap right along this to give it sort of a nice effect at the end, to have that fully wrapped look. But you would need to add probably about another 40 centimetres or so on, just to make sure that you've really got enough, because it does actually take quite a lot of wire, does that kind of wrapping. So let me just move my tools out of the way for a second, because they're going to get caught up. So you've got your beads ready to go on. You need to drop your first bead down, so we just want that tube. So it's dropped down the wire, and we're just going to lay it across. So we're just laying it straight across the front. So whilst we're channel setting, everything's going to lay across the front or across the back. Nothing crosses in between. It'll make more sense when we do the end, but nothing crosses in between. So we're going to wrap the top wire 3 times. So once, twice, and I'm pushing that wire together each time so that I get really nice, neat wraps. So 3 times. Now we're not going to add any beads when we come down the back. We'll only add beads over the front. So this wire is just going to come straight down the back there, and we're just going to wrap over 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. So we've channel set our first bead, it's in there nice and secure, and we've got 3 wraps at the top, 3 wraps at the bottom. Now we can add our next set. So if you remember, our next set was a 5. So laying that across, that should fit quite nicely inside. Obviously, if you're using different size beads, just work out what works nicely for you. I would say to don't overfill the space to underfill the space, if anything, because it will keep your cuff more sort of level. And we're going to wrap over 3 times. So 1, 2, and 3, and then we're again straight down the back. So if I just turn that over, you don't need to turn it over as you do this, but that wire comes straight down the back, and then you're wrapping over the bottom wire, which if I turn it round, it'll go back to being the bottom wire. 2 and 3, and then we're ready to add our next section. So let me just pull some more beads down. So my next section I know is that 5 with the copper bead in the middle. Like I said, all the details to where I got these beads. Now you're not going to be able to just go and buy these beads because it's actually from a subscription, but you will get more details on the subscription, which is amazing, right at the end of the video. So again, wrapping the bottom 3 times, and channel setting really is, or can be, as simple as this. So we're just adding beads as we go along, and just every so often just kind of smooth everything out and make sure everything's kind of as parallel as possible. We want to keep it as parallel as possible, so just make any adjustments that you need to. So we're just going to add that next section, which is 5 beads. Like so, and just make sure they push nicely up together and lay them across. Just support your beads as you're wrapping them around, and over once, twice, and 3 times, and back down, straight down the back. So this is how the back is looking. Just got a straight line straight down the back, and then your beads are at the front. Okay, so now you're just going to continue doing that until you've got all your beads set in. So like I said, on mine I use 9 tubes, which is 8 sections of the aventurine. Okay, and you're going to continue all the way to the end. Now if it happens that you run out of wire, if you've not taken enough wire, or your wire, heaven forbid, your wire snaps, don't panic. You don't have to unwrap everything. Everything's fine. All you'll do is you'll finish your wraps at the top. So once you've done your wraps at the top, you can snip that off. And then you're in a place where you can do exactly what we did at the beginning. Add them first 3 wraps, and then you can just continue adding. The only thing that will be missing is one of those runs down the back, but it's at the back and nobody's going to notice. So that's, I just thought I'd give you that little tip. If you do run out or your wire snaps, you don't have to start again. You just snip off at the top and add from the bottom. That's 1, 2, 3. Is that 3? Yes. And then I'm going to continue adding. So I'm going to keep adding these, and I will meet you back right when we get to the end, and I'll show you the difference in the weave just as we finish it off, and how to shape and finish off the end. So I'll see you back again in just a few seconds. So I've got to the end of my weaving. So what I can do now is I can take this tail off, so I can just trim that, and you want to trim it, it's kind of at the back, and so that you can just use the end of your chain nose pliers just to kind of bring that around and tuck it on the inside here. So you want all your ends to kind of end on the inside. Now what I've done is I did take 2.5 meters, and this is enough to do a little bit of weaving, but I would quite like to have a bit more because I will be chopping that end off as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that adding wire that I talked about. So I've done my 3 wraps at the top, and then what I'm going to do is exactly what I've just said. I'm going to cut it so that I can tuck my wire on the inside. So I can just tuck my wire on the inside. There we go. And now I can add some more wire. So I've probably had 30 centimeters. I'm probably going to add about 50 centimeters. It's only a little bit more. And I'm just going to do that adding wire. So I'm just going to pop my wire up through in the middle, just laying that tail just over to one side, and I'm going to add 3 wraps just so it mimics the opposite side. 1, 2, 3, and now I'm still ready to start changing the design. So I'm changing the design into a basket weave. So it's often also called a figure of 8 weave. So if you can imagine this way around, we're going to create a figure of 8 around these prongs. So we're going over the bottom one, so my wire's coming up and over, then I'm going to go down in between, up the other side and over, and I'm going to wrap around 2 times on that one. So once and twice. Now my wire's already coming down through the middle, and I'm going to come up and over the bottom one and wrap 2 times, once, twice. My wire's already coming down in the middle, and I'm going to go over the top. So we're just going to continue doing that basically until this wire runs out. So around each side twice. So imagine you've got 2 prongs and you're wrapping around, but each time twice wrapped around and crossing in the middle. So let's see if we can just kind of see that. Can you see that figure of 8 there in the middle where it crosses? That's the look we're wanting. So let's just let this build up for a few seconds. Just 2 wraps on each side. 1, 2. Opposite side, 1, 2. This is just kind of to finish it off without it just being a bead with a couple of wraps on the end. So it just gets a really nice finish to it. Just be mindful that they don't kind of try and draw in together. Try and keep them parallel still. I may have done an extra wrap there, but I'll let me off. And 2, and you can see this is why I took that little bit more wire, because it does eat your wire very quickly. I've only done about 1 centimetre, and I've probably only got about 15 centimetres left, so it does use quite a bit of wire, this weave, because of the width that we've got going on. So almost done. Just go until you get to the end of it, and that's just giving us that nice finish to the end of our bracelet, and it's another design feature. So I'm just going to finish, and I'm going to finish on 2 or 3 wraps on 1 wire. Again, I'm going to cut it so that I know I can sort of sit that in and around, and it's not going to be scratchy against anybody's skin. Okay, now I've still got a little tail there, you see. So again, I'm just going to snip that right on the inside there, and then I'm just going to go in with my pliers. Be tricky because that bead's there, but actually I can just slide that out a little bit and then push it back in. Make sure that's squished down and then push that back together. There we go. So now we can do our shaping. So shaping, you don't need a bracelet mandrel or anything like that. You can use the warmth of your hands. So and what we want to do is make sure it's not a circle, it's this kind of oval shape. So we're making sure we're bending that end and just start making our shape, and just do it bit by bit until you're happy. And the best thing is the more time you kind of spend shaping it, it's actually you're work hardening your wire, so you're actually conditioning your piece. So it's like you're creating, you're making the wire kind of a little bit harder each time you touch it and move it, which will make a more solid piece. So eventually it won't bend that much. So I'm quite happy with that shape now, and all we need to do is finish this end off. So obviously if you wanted it a little bit longer, you could add another section of beads maybe and to here. This fits my wrist size, which my wrist measures 6 inches all the way around. So I'm going to cut these, and they're going to be about 1 centimetre, so less than ½ inch each, and I'm just going to eyeball those. There, it'll be about right. And then I'm going to take my round nose pliers. So I'm going to use sort of the widest, one of the widest parts of this, and I'm going to bend them towards the inside. So also when I cut those there, I cut with a flush side of my pliers. So the flat side of your pliers, you kind of usually get like a dip in that creates a V, and the flat side, and you want the flat side towards your work, the bit that you're keeping. So I'm going a little bit down on my plier just so it makes a slightly bigger loop, making sure I can't feel anything on this side. And then I'm just going to turn around, and I'm actually turning the piece a little bit as well, just so I can control and watch it turn. I'm just turning it right around until it kind of meets itself again, so it makes that complete loop. I'm going to do the same with the opposite side. Try and use the same part of your pliers. Make sure you can't feel it on the outside. And don't be worried about sort of taking your pliers out and readjusting. Just make sure you're comfortable and create that loop in. So we've got 2 loops there, and that is your bracelet finished. So that will give it a little bit of grip again against your wrist, and you can just pop it on. And then I just use, every time you do this, it'll create a better shape as well. Just use the warmth of your hands to create the shape and make it fit really nicely. So I will just explain my nails. It is just about to be our Jubilee week in the UK. So our Queen will have been reigning for 70 years. So we're celebrating Jubilee. So there's lots of celebrations and things going on at the moment. So hence the red, white and blue nails for the Union Jack. So just a little word about where the ingredients for this cuff came from. I was recently a inspiration designer for the Rocks and Chains Relax and Craft subscription box. So I created an exclusive design just for the box. You can't actually get that unless you actually had the box, but this is like an additional thing that I've just done just for my YouTube channel. So, and what happens is you pay for the subscription box. You can just go to the rocksandchains.com website, and each month, you will get a different medium of jewellery making. As far as I know, they ship worldwide, but do check the website. And it's amazing. Sometimes you get a tool in there, you get gemstones in there, you get all sorts of creative ingredients to make fantastic jewellery. And as well as all that, as well as everything you get in the box, you will get a tutorial every month. You will get added to a Facebook group which gives you extra tuition, extra tutorials, lots of inspiration, and a fantastic community atmosphere. I've been so impressed with it, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I've absolutely loved the kit that I was given. There's more if you have a look on the Rocks and Chains Facebook page as well, but I will tag them below. And I think for the value that you get for that, it's absolutely fantastic. It's so creative, it's so inspirational, which is all good. So thank you very much for watching. I will be back again very soon with some more tutorials. I'm sorry they're taking so long at the moment. I've got lots on. So yeah, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you click the bell and get all your notifications when I do post a video. And I will see you again really soon. Thanks for watching.